couldn't really even afford train travel. He was having to bunk trains and stuff like that, and hide in the toilet when the ticket collectors come round. He didn't have the money to be able to do it, and he was thinking he was going to have to go back to the back and work at the docks. The skill set in women's MMA now is going through the roof. So Cory is in the right place. She looks phenomenal in the last 2 fights. But yeah, I think she can go all the way. Someone giving up their jobs. They're training like a full-time pro.
Scary, isn't it?
By when they've only had one amateur fight. The skill set of the fighters, 5-10 years, is just going to be. You're going to make these guys that are fighting now just look like amateurs.
Hello and welcome to Octagonside with me, John Gooden. For this episode, I got to sit down with Jack Mason. Jack has had nearly 50 professional MMA fights. He runs a promotion, he manages some of the top fighters in the world, and he holds down a day job. I needed to speak to him to get his routine, get some tips, and get his overall perspective on mixed martial arts. I really hope you enjoy this conversation between me and Jack the Stone Mason. So Jack, thanks, I'm all right. Thanks for sitting down with me. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for quite a while now. I've always admired your commitment to the cause.
Yeah.
And I think to kick off, what I need from you, in your words, all your different job titles.
I'm a MMA coach. That's probably my number one sort of passion at the moment. But,
right.
But I also am a fight promoter and a manager as well, like an athlete manager. So
you've left out the day job as well, though.
I work for I'm a head of change for a financial services firm.
So you just I just cast that off, right? The job that people
and a gym
would
owner as well, yeah.
Like they'd go and a gym owner as well, right? Yeah. So you're doing about 5 different full-time jobs on top of a full-time job.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
When are you going to create an app for that, Jack? Because I think I need to buy into it. How the hell do you balance that?
Just lots of Monster and lots of coffee. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned the job in a city. We're in a city now. That again, when I first came across your story, I think it was one of my coaches, Denison Sutherland, who I know that you fought back in the day. But I'm not sure if I told you this before, but seeing you at UFC MMA, you know how it is especially when you're young in the game, everyone else is the enemy. And I used to see you at the fights quite a lot, and you're quite an intimidating guy, your fight style as well. And you looked with Dave O'Donnell and his style, I always thought, I probably don't want to meet that guy down and out. And now I've realised or found out you're like a graduate who then worked in the City of London, and you kind of do this thing on the side, which is just, they're worlds apart, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't see myself as an intimidating person, but I can understand that sometimes. And as you say, I work in the city, and it has really helped my involvement in MMA, and
it has
helped my job. So a lot of things, a lot of the time you're in meetings with clients or whatever, and it's just something to talk about. I would, when I was fighting, I would have a client meeting maybe next week, and I'd be fighting on Saturday. I'd have to give them a call or something, just to pre-warn them. I might have a black eye, I might have a facial scar or something like that. And but it was always a talking point, and it just helped to build relationships. And they always remembered you.
I bet they did.
I think it's definitely helped my career. So
that's in stark contrast to how I remember it for myself, and not that I was necessarily coming in with black eyes. I think when I found MMA, actually, it was at a different time, but I wasn't even allowed to wear this kind of stubble when I worked in the city. So and I remember back in the day, actually, we used to have quite a few people in UK MMA scene that would be like doubling up as firemen or police officers, and certain fire stations would be okay with the fighting, but maybe not others. So how were you managing to get a kind of pass, a green light to have this other thing?
As I said, I would just pre-warn them, because if, for instance, I just turned up to meet with a black eye, they would probably not mention it,
right,
and just think I was out of the weekend having a fight. But if I explained to them, and I would always tell them, you can watch it on whatever, and I would sort of let them know, and it just seemed to work in my favour. So yeah, it was as long as I pre-warned them and kept everyone sort of happy and speaking about it, it seemed to work in my favour.
The reason why I'm probably exploring this a bit more, and this will go into like how long you've been involved in the sport.
Yeah.
And I think I've been around this game for like 15 years. You were there some years before that as well. And what I mean by that is the lack of understanding that I've encountered in those early days. Even now, people don't get it. Yeah. So I almost want to be a fly on the wall back like 15, 20 years ago when you were having these conversations with city financiers in some of these beautiful buildings trying to explain mixed martial arts.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was, so I started in 2005. I found MMA in 2005, and I was just starting work then. So I just finished university, was looking for a rugby club to train at, because that's what I used to train. And on Gumtree, which I'm not even sure if that website's around anymore, but I found a site for, a place that you could train wrestling. I used to watch UFC on Bravo back in the day.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was always interested in maybe doing it, because they used to speak about, I was never interested in fighting MMA, but they used to speak about this guy's a collegiate wrestler or whatever. Right. So I thought, I'd love to give that a go. And then I saw it, and then I went to this wrestling place and found out about MMA and started training MMA. And I think within about 8 weeks, I had a fight booked.
That's what's crazy about early days in UK MMA in particular. To think now, 8 weeks in the gym, and then so full pro, was it like elbows and...
Yeah, from nothing to... I'd actually never seen, apart from watching on Bravo, I'd never seen an MMA fight live. I'd never even experienced it. And I think because of that, I had absolutely no nerves when I had my first fight, because I had no idea what to expect. And I didn't even watch a fight when I arrived at the show. We turned up, I went backstage, got warmed up, and then went out and did this fight. And
now, as a coach, if you heard that someone had put their guy into a fight with 8 weeks training, into a pro fight, like how would you be judging that coach?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're definitely looking after their members or their athletes. So, yeah, you can't do that now. but the level of these athletes now is just night and day.
Yeah.
Back in the day, the people that compete in, they might, there were people that were experiencing other sports and were very dangerous people. They might have been doing Thai boxing, but no one really trained MMA as a sport
itself, yeah.
on its own. But there were lots of people that were just hard men and just went in to have these fights. But now these guys majority of them been training, 5 years before they've even had a fight, and they're just completely well-rounded. They're much better than the professionals were back in the day when I started. And it's they've been training since they were youngsters, and their level is just extremely high, and you get extremely hurt if you end up fighting one of these guys now. Yeah.
Give us an idea of what the UK MMA scene was like then when you started to get involved.
Well, so I'll give you one example. So it was very lawless, very you just turn up and have a fight, and there was no regulation or anything like that. You had, because the internet wasn't really, well, it wasn't definitely what it is today, but there was no YouTube. You couldn't see previous fights of your, unless you found the VHS or the DVD of your opponent's fights, which wasn't going to happen. You would not know what you were going into to fight against. So one example, I ended up fighting Maris Saromskis, who went on to be the dream.
Is he the Rolling Thunder guy?
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I turned up to this event at the Circus Tavern in Purfleet, which is another crazy place. But I turned up there and I had no idea who was fighting. You didn't know. You just turn up on the day. You turn up at 10 a.m. They weigh you in on the same day weigh-in. They weigh you in.
Same day matchmaking.
Yep.
Oh my god.
And they would then write your name on the board. This is how much you weighed, and then other people would turn up who also wanted to fight, and you would get their. They would get their weights as well, and then they would match you. And so you wouldn't find out, like on this specific day, I didn't find out who I was going to fight until 4 o'clock on the day, or just looking at the whiteboard. We were in the change room. I actually, the funny story was, I saw this guy walking around, absolutely shredded, like mean. So I said to my teammate, "Fuck, I feel sorry for the guy that's fighting that guy, right?"
It's Marius.
Yeah. I didn't know. I literally hadn't seen him until I walked into the ring and he was there. I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And yeah, and that's what it was like. Nowadays, you won't get. There's no one, and quite rightly, but no one will take a fight against someone unless they've seen their fights on YouTube. They've done research on them, had time to look at who they're up against, seen their record and topology, all that type of stuff. So it's a completely different world now, but it was exciting, and there's there's many stories like that sort of come up. But yeah,
how many fights have you had now?
48 professional MMA fights.
That's a big old career.
Yeah.
Congratulations, first of all.
I always wanted some. I'm not happy with my win and loss record, but it is what it is. And but I've always wanted to make it to 50. But I promised my wife that I wouldn't do that. So yeah. I think I had over the 50 fights I had, or 48 fights I had, didn't really take any damage until the last 3. So I fought.
Vittori was in the last 3, wasn't he? Marvin Vittori.
So in the last 3 I fought Marvin Vittori, Jason Radcliffe and Hakan Foss. And in those last 3 fights, I got my teeth knocked out and a gigantic scar on my forehead. You can't really see it now, but it was it's in the eyebrow line. But
now you brought it up. Like, it was I've been around a minute, and it was one of the worst cuts I've ever seen in MMA. Yeah,
and all three of those injuries were by knee as well. So knees are my Achilles heel.
That's that wrestle heavy approach that you mentioned.
So I'm probably not going to fight again. But I've had a lot of experience, fought some of the best guys in the world, and I've got I feel like I've got a lot to teach, and obviously the guys that I coach, I'm able to sort of explain to them all of the mistakes I've made so they don't have to make them.
Yeah. There's other guys like you fought Mark Weir, right?
Yeah, I fought Mark
the Wizard Weir.
Yeah.
What's it like though when you're going up against guys like that? Because he's much like yourself. I class you in the same regard as a pioneer, but he was there. What's it? UFC 38.
Yeah, he had the fast. He had the record for the fastest ever knockout in the UFC.
Yeah.
And when I fought him, I kind of realised the level at which he was operating, and it was skill set wise. I thought I had his number, but in the fight, I realised I've got to do a lot more here, because he was just some of the little tricks he was doing when we were in there.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting them, and the little things that in the fight you will realise, but you might not notice if you were watching tape on him. Some of the little things he did, like he's got quite long arms. He held my arm behind my back where we were on the cage, and that made it really difficult for me. But it was definitely a learning experience, and yeah, as you say, he's a pioneer, and he had a lot of veteran tricks up his sleeve, which made me think about what I needed to do to improve after that. Yeah.
Who inspired you when you were getting into MMA? It's a tough question. So the fighter I've always been in awe of, and to be fair, he's only a year or 2 older than me, but
he was fighting before I did, and obviously was in my opinion the best to ever do it is GSP.
Right.
He was. I just think the way obviously his skill set, the way he approaches the game, all his preparation, everything, and the way he fights. I just loved everything about his approach to mixed martial arts, and that's one of the reasons why we sent Arnold out to train at TriStar.
Right.
But so GSP was always my biggest inspiration, but I think to start with, when I first started MMA, there was a friend from school that was already competing. I think he fought on Cage Warriors as well back in the day, in the early days. A guy called Alan Lee, and so he was in the GB judo team.
Okay.
But was also competing in MMA as well at the time, and then a guy called Danny Mann as well, who was his friend, based in the same town I was in, but he was travelling out to this was in 2005, but travelling out to the States, competing. I think he fought King of the Cage out there.
Oh yeah.
And he was that guy was unbelievable. I think you'll see as a coach and being around the sport for a long time, but you'll see lots of really talented athletes kind of waste their talent through either through not working hard or other things that in life that come up.
Just
so
interrupt.
Married, kids, whatever it is, and maybe don't fulfill their full potential. And Danny Mann is definitely one of them. He was probably, and still is, one of the best guys that I've ever trained with.
Right.
And if he'd have been able to dedicate his life to it, I think he would have been, could have been a world champion.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Let's into the collection of individuals that you were helping sharpen your tools as you were really getting into your groove, because there's some names that people will recognise, and you guys really were representing, particularly the Southeast, and then obviously the UK on a world level. So
when I was training with Alan Lee and Danny Mann, because there were no MMA gyms didn't really exist, or if they did, they were very few and far between. There was a gym in Cambridge, which was it was actually a little town called Warboys, north of Cambridge. Warboys.
That sounds appropriate.
Yeah. And this gym was called Tsunami Gym, and it was originally based out of Robbie Olivier, the former cage race champs, father-in-law's barn. So his father-in-law had a farm, and there was a barn which we matted out, and there was a cage in there, and it was actually a really good facility. A
cage, that's actually unheard of back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Nice.
There's a guy called Nigel. Nigel Burgess,
who's very big in the amateur scene.
Absolutely, yeah. So he's also an engineer. He's like and he put the cage together and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was a really good facility. So Robbie Olivier was heading up Tsunami along with Pierre Gillet, Lee Dosky, Mark Day, and a few others.
Right.
But they were pioneers at the time, and Robbie had a big rivalry with Brad Pickett in Cage Rage. I think Lee Dosky had back and forth fights with Dan Hardy. They were all about it at the time. They were really successful.
I was speaking to John Kavanagh. Didn't he fight Robbie Olivier?
He did.
One or two fights. Yeah, I was speaking to him about that. Yeah.
And so these guys were, doing some big things, and we used to, Danny, Alan, and I used to drive up to Warboys like 3 times a week.
It's not close, really. Is it?
So it would take, one thing. I'd go up after work, so it would be, be talking, and it's an hour and a half with no traffic. Could be 3 hours each way with traffic.
Such a commitment.
Yeah, and so you spend, you could spend 7-8 hours after work driving to this place to train, and with that commitment was I kind of went all in really. Once I really found myself in love with the sport, that was all I did.
Well, you say that, but you still held down a job in the city for all the years that I've known you.
Yeah, I was doing that, but I think I had a mortgage when I was 21, so I had to pay for that. So I had no choice. But
because there's no career path at this point, really, Jack, is there?
No.
So it was purely for the love.
Everyone was doing it for the love of it. You know, they were, losing teeth, or Rob. Lots of people were getting bad injuries, but as you say, they were just doing it for the love of the sport.
Yeah.
And it just felt different back then, because everyone that was involved, because there was no social media really, there was no YouTube, no Facebook, nothing. Or if there was, it was very early days.
Yeah.
People weren't doing it for likes or attention. It was actually they were doing it for t-shirts.
Yeah, sorry, that's all that they could do it for.
Yeah,
right?
there was that was it. So there was my first fight was on anger management in in Western Supermare.
Yeah,
and you got a t-shirt.
Yeah. That's it. No money.
Exactly. You got a t-shirt. You didn't get paid, but you got a t-shirt, and you wore that everywhere. Yeah, it was like it had fighter written on the back, and you were proud to wear it because it was like you wouldn't get that anywhere else. And it was pretty cool. But it was just just a different. I'm not saying there aren't those types of people in the sport now, but there are more of. There are more people that aren't doing it just for the love of the sport. Yeah. And it was a cool time to be around, I think, and it makes you appreciate the sport nowadays, because it's definitely moved on. It's definitely moved on for the better. The safety, the visibility, and people are genuinely able to make a good career out of it now.
There was the generation that maybe just followed shortly after you, that then ended up at Tsunami Gym. Can you talk about that time as well? Because I think that was when you guys were clearly onto something with the level of talent that you were churning.
Yeah, so it was definitely so Tsunami Gym was actually the head coach of Tsunami Gym was August Wallen. So he's a Swedish guy. He actually was set up the Swedish MMA Federation and IMAF as well. He's one of the guys that spearheaded that. Yeah, but he used to run Shooters MMA, which is still about now, but it was a lot more. It was one of the only places you could go to find the curriculum for how to teach MMA, and Tsunami was part of that. So between Robbie and August, they developed a way of coaching people, which was
first.
It was a first. It was a really good thing to do, and basically what that did was help keep the coaching level at a standard where it should be, basically, and people had to know specific techniques in order to then go on to compete. If you didn't know specific techniques, they wouldn't allow you to compete. Anyway, so when I first started at Tsunami, a guy called John Maguire started with his brother Tommy Maguire. So we started within a couple of weeks of each other, and there were. Luke Barnett joined after that, so there was quite, there was a big amount of talent. Fabio Ferrari, there's lots of others, but sort of John was the first guy from Tsunami Gym to make it to the UFC, and he took probably the hard road to get to UFC. If you know what I mean, he beat everyone, every welterweight or middleweight in the UK really. That wasn't already signed before he got his shot, and you know, he was ready to go, you know, because he'd had those sort of tough fights already, and it felt like when he got the call, it just felt well deserved, you know.
It's a big thing for a gym as well, isn't it? Especially even today, but back then it must have felt massive.
Yeah, it was huge because there weren't many UK guys in the UFC. And obviously the guys that were in the UFC were, you know, the elites of the elites. You know, Dan Hardy at the time, Paul Daly, Bisping, obviously, and
maybe Brad.
Yeah,
who I guess is a rival, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
So it's quite nice to then we've got a guy in there as well.
Yeah, and then so John went into the UFC, and then Luke Barnett followed a few years later, after sort of seeing the route that John took. So it was it was pretty cool, and there was it just felt like the gym were doing the right things to be able to get there, and that's kind of where that was just some of the experiences we had there were just brilliant, and you will never forget. Yeah.
We're going to skip about a bit, I think, but I really want to give some good time to talking about Arnold Allen.
Yeah.
And I know, and then I think the gym will come into the conversation there. But when did you first meet Arnold? So
Arnold came into. So we started BKK in 2010, and I think we actually opened the doors. We started with a small group of athletes, and then we opened the doors to the public on the 1st of January 2011. And between either when it was around the January 2011, Arnold and Pacer Allen showed up to the gym. So Pacer was still competing a bit then as well. Yeah. And Arnold was a young boy, sort of 14, and he'd done some boxing before, and he'd been doing some Thai boxing also, and he was clearly a talent already, and he was looking to take his MMA career to the next level, really. So he was clearly a super talent at the time, and he just kept showing up. Him and his dad kept showing up, and I ended up cornering him for one of his first amateur fights against the guy we train with now, actually. But that was one of the first times I realised that this guy's going to be special, just because of the way he handled this guy in his first fight.
Can you give a little bit more when you say handled it? Was it like the mental side, the taking instruction?
So he was competing against a guy called Alfie Rafferty, and Alfie.
That's a great name, by the way.
Yeah. So Alfie's a legit black belt, competing and winning at black belt at the moment. But he was always a grappling based guy,
right.
And Arnold, to start with, was a kickboxing, boxing based guy, and Alfie was trying to take him down, trying to submit him, and Arnold was just tenacious in his defence. Every time he got taken down, was straight back up, and he had a bit of adversity in that fight, but you could see he really wanted to win, and he was vicious with it as well. So he would eventually stuff the takedowns, and then when he got his moment to land some strikes, he did, and
right.
It was to brutal effect. And but you could just see, like, even when he faced that adversity as a young man in his fights, you could just see that there was just no quitting him, and he really wanted to win. Yeah.
So you were his head coach from when he was 14.
Yeah.
That's crazy now. So mean, you're obviously not going to be able to tell us all the stories from then going forward, but are there some specific moments if we climb from that amateur phase? Because I've spoken to Arnold, and he's told me the difficulties. So we were talking about your 3-hour journey. Like he lives on the most eastern point of the country. So for him to get anywhere, he's just remote. Yeah, so there's a lot of commitment there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the transfer links aren't amazing from where he lives, and so he lives on, as you say, on the east coast in in a place called Trimley next to Felixstowe, and that's where all the docks are. And there's a big bridge from Felixstowe to Ipswich, and when the winds are high, which they are quite often, they shut the bridge, so it makes it even more difficult to get across. Yeah, but he would, it's a 40-minute drive to the gym if you have a car, which he didn't when he was young, or clearly, and he wasn't even legal, of legal age to drive, so he would have to get a train to train in, and it would take, just from, because there was no direct route, it would probably take him 2 hours or sometimes longer to get to the gym each way, and it was difficult. And he would also, where we started to develop relationships with other gyms in the local area, he would go to train in Southend, which is even longer away, to train his jiu-jitsu, and strength and conditioning. He would train in Chelmsford, and there was just there's a ton of travel to get the right training in. But he was super dedicated, and that's
doesn't
what
sound like he's
ever
really moaned about it either.
No. I mean, anyone that meet Arnold, he is dedicated and driven individual, but he is also quite, he's never, I don't think I've ever heard him complain about anything.
Right.
He just gets on with it, and whatever he needs to do to achieve his goals, that's what we'll do. Yeah.
He goes through as a teenager.
Yeah.
He cuts through the scene, and I remember meeting you guys a couple of times, like speaking to both you and Luke. Excuse me. Talking about Arnold, and he was 16, and you guys are saying he's going all the way.
Well, this is it. So, so we used to where we had a relationship with the guys in Sweden. August Wallen was Alexander Gustafsson's first coach, and Alex used to come over, visit, train with us, and we used to go out there and train with him. And Alex was, I think he was in the UFC at the time, and he was over in the UK, and he said, and I said to him, we've got a young lad, Arnold Allen. He's fighting tonight. He's only 15. He's fighting a 30-year-old man. But do you want to come and watch? And he didn't have anything to do that night. He thought, okay, I'll come and watch. So Alex came over. Again, that was at the Circus Tavern, and Arnold fought a 30-year-old man. And we wouldn't normally put
a 15-year-old kid, yeah.
But there's no way you could put another 15-year-old boy in with Arnold at the time, because there would be, it would be dangerous. But Arnold fought, and this opponent was legit as well. Arnold went through some adversity in that fight as well, but then came back with a big takedown, and then I think he finished the guy with a rear naked choke. But yeah, he really impressed in that fight. I think it was his last amateur fight before he went pro. But he impressed Alex. Alex was like, this guy's going to be special, and yeah, we just another example of how anyone that saw him compete at a young age just realised he's going to go and do something really special in the future.
What I love about that as well is you've just made the scenes seem so small as well.
Yeah.
Alexander Gustafsson at one time was the guy that was nominated to go as the EA Sports poster boy.
Yeah.
He was that close to grabbing the title, and because the sports we borrow off of a lot of people, and it's so close. It's you guys have this very close affinity with him, which is very cool. So his UFC debut.
Yeah.
So I know we're fast forwarding a lot of stuff here, but I think I remember that there were a few things about that it was like late notice and stuff. Can you talk about that and what it was like from your perspective as I don't know if you were managing him at the time, but certainly coaching, mentoring this kid, still a kid, that you'd been with since 14. Now he's in that position. Well, through your lens, what's that experience like?
So Arnold he was in his, I think he'd had something like 8 fights as a professional. Over the past year, we we had not been able to get Arnold a fight. No one would take a fight with him. He had a load of fights on Cage Warriors, beaten quite a few international opponents, and we just couldn't get him a fight. Cage Warriors couldn't match him,
which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah.
If anyone can, Cage Warriors
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it was just really difficult. We ended up, Arnold obviously fights a featherweight. He at the time wasn't particularly big featherweight either, but we actually got an offer for him to fight. I should remember the guy's name, but fight one of the big local stars on Made for the Cage up in Newcastle at lightweight, and this was going to be for the lightweight title. We couldn't get him a fight at featherweight. This came up. It was a tough fight.
Sounds like a risk.
It was a risky fight, but we just could not get him a fight.
Had he dropped? What was his record at this point?
He was. I think he was 8-1. I think.
Yeah, it was an early. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he's knocking on the door anyway.
Yeah.
But back in those times,
Absolutely,
you get that. That's a good enough record to get you to the UFC.
Yeah. And we were trying to get him into the UFC at the time, but there didn't seem to be,
the appetite for it.
The appetite to sign him straight away. So we ended up making a decision to take this risky fight. It was a back and forth fight. Then Arnold sort of come on really strong and got this big finish in this sort of really bloody fight, and really impressed. So we were really happy with that. He was the Made for the Cage lightweight champion at the time, and then a couple of weeks later, we got a phone call to say, 6 days notice. 6 days notice. The UFC have got someone a dropout against Alan Omar in Berlin.
So a German in Germany.
Yeah. Can you get out of here? We're like, yes. So obviously got on a flight straight away.
But his weight must have been all over the place, since that he just competed at lightweight.
Yeah, but he was, as I say, he wasn't a big featherweight at the time.
Okay.
He wasn't, he's never been. The guy's never been fat in his life, but he
has an uncanny ability to make the weight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he made the weight very easily, and the rest was history. It was a real experience out in Berlin. Obviously, it was all really short notice. The guy, he at the time Arnold had absolutely no money. There was some press conferences and stuff he had to go to. People lent him the money to buy the clothes to go to the press conferences.
We are really talking like.
I think he had £6 in his bank account, I think, at the time, and yeah, it was one of those moments where he again very short notice fight against a good opponent, was a very tough fight in the end. He ended up putting it out the bag.
Was it a ninja choke?
Third round, yeah, with a ninja choke. Yeah, he was on his way to losing the decision.
Yeah, he
100%.
came from behind.
But that's the guy is so tenacious, and it just his will to win is incredible, and he pulled out the bag and choked the guy and got the 50 grand bonus. So from having absolutely no money, probably owing people money, not he had £6 in his bank account, but he then managed to get a little bit of money together after that fight.
I bet.
And then the rest was history, really.
So between rounds in that debut, your fighter's losing. You've known him since he's 14. You're heavily invested. Like, what's that like as a coach?
I mean, it was really frustrating in the fight. I'll be honest, because obviously it's a short notice fight, a huge debut. He's in a huge arena, a fight for the UFC. So he's gonna be.
And stop me for a second. Like, how many times have you been in that position? I'm sure maybe you've done it with Luke, but is it quite a new thing for you as well?
It was for me. It was a bit of a new thing. I'd cornered John and Luke in the UFC,
right?
But I'd never been head coach.
Okay. So
for me, it was a big thing, and obviously, Luke and John were my teammates.
Right.
It's a slightly different responsibility being being the head coach, and you feel a lot more responsible for what's going down. And in this fight, Arnold wasn't using his jab very well. He's got phenomenal jab, and he was basically allowing Omar to dictate the pace of the fight, and he was getting good takedowns and stuff. And I was losing my mind in the corner there, and then in between the second and third round, I sort of explained to Arnold, you're losing this fight. You're going to lose it by decision. You've got to do something here, and and he did. He pulled it out of the bag from something. We had been. I actually remember that choke demonstrated, because Alexander Gustafsson showed me that choke.
No way.
So I was showing it in the class, and I heard Sean and Arnold muttering, "That choke's never going to work." And I think I got quite annoyed with him when they said that, even when I was coaching. But and obviously he pulled it out of the bag. So
he used something that isn't that a story? I love that.
And he also finished. He's
done it again, hasn't he?
Mads Burnell with the same choke as well. Yeah.
In a fight where he was probably wasn't going his way again.
Exactly.
Mads Burnell turned out to be like Mike Tyson that fight from memory.
Yeah.
The grappler turned boxer.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Like, how emotional is that then? That choke goes in, he gets the tap after everything. Like,
me and Sean Carter were a sobbing wreck backstage. So Arnold was doing interviews, having his medicals done, and we were literally sitting, hugging each other, crying into each other's shoulders. It was very emotional.
Isn't it a wild game?
Yeah.
To create that, and you've been there.
Yeah.
Why did it create that kind of reaction for you, do you think?
Just because, you know how much it meant to Arnold. Like, he genuinely was at the point in his career where money was so difficult, he couldn't afford, he couldn't really even afford train travel. He was having to bunk trains and stuff like that, and hide in the toilet when the ticket collectors come around. He didn't have the money to be able to do it, and he was thinking he was going to have to go back and work at the docks at Felixstowe, and because he just wasn't paying the money that he needed to, and for him to see his dreams come true and then be in a position where he could continue to pursue his career, that was just it's just an amazing feeling to see him achieve that initial dream, and it's definitely a special thing.
Yeah. So then you allowed your star pupil, someone who you've managed, to go across seas to Canada. Testament, I think, to a great coach to be able to do that. But why did you let your star kid go when a lot of people want to cling on to their fighters? Well,
so the thing is with Arnold, and I kind of always said it to him, was that his fighting style, and this was in his UFC debut, right? So his fighting style, he was always he was never as measured as he could be. So he would go out to.
It's like a berserker, wasn't he?
Yeah. And the best person. Well, from my hero in the sport, and the guy that I thought did it the best was GSP, and obviously Firas Zahabi was also a big part of that. I think Firas is probably one of the best strategic minds in the game, and the way I saw it, we did talk about him going to different places, American Top Team, other places, but I was always worried. I always thought that what Arnold needed was a more measured approach for him to really become champion, because you're only going to get so far just going all out trying to take people's heads off. And
why didn't you think you could help get him there?
Well, firstly, I'm not a full-time coach, so I have a day job. I can't be there every day, in the mornings and the evenings. Second, so firstly there's that. Secondly, the people in the gym, they weren't at the same level, so he wasn't getting pushed to the level that he needed to be.
Right.
And so combination of both things, okay. and also it's just it's great for him to be able to go and experience something new as well. And I definitely think it was the best decision we ever made. You know, the way that Firas has changed Arnold's game. That, you know, there was some criticism with Arnold in that he would, prior to going to TriStar, he was an all-action type fighter.
Yeah.
When he went to TriStar, he took on this more measured approach, and he was winning. You know, and Arnold was his biggest critic as well, but he was just winning by decision. And I feel like it you know, it's always when you've got a fighter and you're transitioning either your style or your approach, there's always going to be a period of time when things aren't quite clicking. So whilst he was winning these decisions, you know, his skill set improved dramatically when he went to TriStar as well. You know, the way he's grappling, his takedown defence, his wrestling, you know, went through the roof. But it was definitely his approach and approach to the fight, the game plan that he was executing was significantly improved. And to fight at that level and not take any damage the way Arnold hasn't taken any damage yet, he, you know, that's testament to the way his approach and the work he's done with Firas. But I feel like he's taken him, he's been in the UFC now 8 years, he is almost got the perfect blend now. It's taken a little while of you know, the strategy, the patience, and he's now where he's got so good at that, he's now able to at the right moment then explode. And you see it with the Dan Hooker fight. You know, there was elements of his previous fighting style where he just went all out.
I'm glad you said that, because my commentary, I think, reflects that from when I used to watch him fight. I remember him like double hammer fisting people from mountains, like maybe hitting guard and stuff, but but the speed in which he used to execute that, he just wanted fight finishing instincts. Yeah,
that's it. And he's always had that, but I think he was so measured in his approach that he didn't let those things go. But where he's really worked on that, he now has I think, almost a perfect blend of strategy, patience, and then, as you say, you know, fight-ending instincts. Yeah. And he's able to start letting that stuff go. And, you know, similar to the Calvin Kattar fight, I know he didn't quite have the emphatic finish that we wanted, but it was going to happen, and you could see there was glimpses of that in the fight while it took, you know, for the short amount of time that it took place.
Yeah. Talking of patience, he's had a frustrating time of it for a young man. It felt like the calendar was working against him for a little while. How do you keep a young man he's gone through so much, he catches a wave, it kind of peters out a little bit, and, you know, as someone very much involved in the UK MMA scene, I felt the frustration for you guys as well. But I'm not the one who's itching to, you know, express myself. So how do you manage a young fighter when they're going through these periods of inactivity?
The way we've, you know, first things first, he's never, because he's saved every single penny that he's ever earned, right? So
is that on him, or is that because of good people around him?
He's got some great people around him, and you know, very level-headed, and his dad is, you know, a really good influence as well. You know, the way he approaches money is that, you know, you don't really need, you know, he's not a materialistic guy. He just needs money to do things he wants to do, but that's it. He doesn't spend anything.
No, he's like old bangers in the field.
Exactly.
Some guys are looking to get like the newest BMW Mercedes, but he's happy with like an old broken 4x4 that he can just upset a farmer with.
He's won a number of performance bonuses. Yeah, he hasn't gone out and bought a flash car. It's just he just buys like the fun cars he wants, but, you know, stuff he can do off-road. Exactly. Yeah. And he enjoys working on those cars and stuff like that. So it's part of his hobby. But as I say, he's been really good with everything he's earned, and what that's allowed him to do is, you know, when he has had situations where either he's been injured, and then the majority of the time where he hasn't been able to fight, it's not been because of him. It's either, you know, the right fight wasn't available and the opponent has, you know, said no, and just things haven't worked out. It has been frustrating, but I also think, and I think Arnold believes as well, it's worked out not by design, but it's worked out perfectly. He's given Arnold enough time to develop as a mixed martial artist, fighting the high level guys that he should be fighting, but not rushing. So he hasn't been fast tracked, which has definitely been a benefit to Arnold, in that he's had all that time to develop and improve his strategy and his skill set, and I feel like he's peaking. He's at the right time. He's 28 years old, number 4 in the world, unbeaten in the UFC in 8 years, and now he's fighting the names that he deserves to be fighting. But I actually feel like if things had maybe been fast tracked a little bit more, that he wouldn't be in the position he's in. So I think it's been a benefit.
Please hold back the information that you share here, but I know we've had some private conversations before about that management of a fighter's career.
Yeah.
So how do I ask this without putting you on the spot? I would imagine it's very difficult. Right, my own personal viewpoint. When the UFC say, "Would you like to do this? Here's the amount of money that I'll give you." No, thank you very much. I'll take it. Like, I'm terrible at negotiating.
Yeah.
That's good for me. I'll do it. It's more than what I was going to earn as an electrician, for example. So there may or may not have been opportunities to fight certain people at certain times, but I'm pretty sure we've had conversations where you really consider the future of the long plan. I think you've had a plan, right?
Yeah.
And have you pushed back on the UFC with regards some of the opportunities that have been presented?
Yeah, we have, and luckily.
And is that risky? Because I feel like there's this mystique about the UFC is if you dare, like even, and I don't think that's true, by the way, but I think I think a lot of people see it as a risky strategy sometimes.
Yeah. I think you have to obviously look at, like, obviously I'm a fight promoter myself as well, so you understand, I can understand that you want to, like, as a promoter, you want to make a matchup at a specific time, but if you can't do it, you can always do it at a later date.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that these fighters are going to miss out on opportunities unless you keep saying no. Right. You have to be mindful of the opportunities that you're presented with and the opportunities you take, because, as you say, they're not going to keep coming if you keep saying no. But you have to be measured in the way that you take the opportunities at the right time. And if something is too risky, your fight's not prepared or whatever, as long as you have them in a position where, for instance, Arnold is, where he's being very careful with his money, he doesn't need the money urgently, then you are in a position to wait that stuff out, and wait for the right fight or the right moment to take that fight. So you do have to, you have to be patient, but as I say, you can't keep saying no, because otherwise they will get. I feel like the UFC are very reasonable as long as you explain why. They're reasonable people, but you can't keep saying no.
Can't take the piss.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a slight side effort, but I think it's an important conversation. Your background, as we said earlier on, in the City of London, that's where the financial markets are, etc. And you're saying that Arnold's kind of his natural instincts with money are to probably be a bit more frugal, which is great from a starting point. But as someone who manages fighters, and you have an overall perspective of how the MMA world works and probably financial markets, what's it really? Is there something that you've done with Arnold and your fighters to help them ride out these peaks and troughs? Because it's very, very difficult. I find it difficult as a freelancer, and I probably there's never big bits of money, but they are infrequent, and you've got to look over like a 12-month period sometimes, because not a lot of people get this right. No. Well, I just think you have to hold on to the money as
much as you can. You know, you shouldn't be spending, like, just in general, you shouldn't be spending above your means. You know, like, we just try and work out how much you need to live, you know, not, you know, live sensibly, and then and don't go above it. You know, you've got a budget, and you know these opportunities. You know, you're going to get 3 fight offers a year. You might not be able to take all those 3 fights depending on what's happening injury wise or whatever. So you have to be mindful that it might be one check a year.
Yeah.
As long as you're managing your budget to ensure that you can still live, you know, you can pay your rent, you can pay for your food and your training, then you have to just, you have to be very careful with it.
What about going forward in terms of like a retirement plan? Is that you obviously have to get a few fights under your belt, maybe a couple of performance bonuses? Well, not a lot of people know how to manage that amount of money.
No, absolutely, yeah. So clearly, you know, like it really depends on where you are in terms of your career. But once you have established yourself and you are fighting for a you know, promotion, you have a contract or whatever, then you do need to start planning for the future. So once you start having that spare money, which isn't, you know, you've got enough to live on, and then for at least the next 12 months, then you can start investing in the future. You know, where you are sort of earning a bit more money, then you need to be putting it away, putting the money away so that it's going to work for you in the future. So the ideal scenario is that you have invested your money in so that it's generating some passive income for you without you doing anything. So that's kind of the long-term goal for everyone, really. You want to have an income where you don't have to do anything, and that's part of the long-term strategy we have with all of the fighters, really.
Right.
We work with some good advisors that are helping us do that.
Right, that's good to know. Yeah, I think it's a young sport, and there's just the knowledge base isn't there to even know where to look.
Well, from speaking to like with Cory McKenna, she has a big relationship with Uriah Faber, who's her coach of Team Alpha Male, and he's also a guy that's, you know, really switched on in terms of his money. You know, anything that I know that, you know, anything that he earned from his career, he put into investments, and the guy's bought all sorts of stuff that generates passive income for him. Yeah. And that's just the way to go. You shouldn't be spending your money on flash cars and stuff like that, because that's just going to go. You know, you should be putting stuff away that's going to help you provide an income for you in the future.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Before we talk about Cory, let's talk about the hooker fight before we speak about Max Holloway, because, you know, being there as well is just like, I mean, the whole night was outstanding, but that fight in particular, after everything that had gone on, but for you as a team, was that the coming out party? We had definitely hoped it would be, because a lot of the criticism Arnold got was, you know, I think at the time he was 8-0 in the UFC, and people were saying, well, you know, he might be 8-0, but, you know, he's not fought any of the big names yet. So there was no fault of Arnold's own. We were trying to get these big names. They just either were not accepting the fight, because they didn't want to fight back in the rankings, or it just didn't happen for whatever reason. But Hooker was the guy that accepted the fight, coming back down from lightweight, and we really, you know, we were elated when we got the offer, it was an emphatic victory. He got the finish. Still some mental critics that said, well, you know, saying that Hooker's like, because he lost his couple of fights, he's done, sort of thing. But you're always going to get those critics. But it was a big win for Arnold, a big name, and we were just hoping to looking to build on that. And it was that event in particular at London was, I'm sure you were there, but the atmosphere was just incredible, and it was just it felt like did feel like a big coming out party for Arnold. But I think this next fight is going to be even bigger for him. Yeah. What do people misunderstand about Arnold, his character?
I mean, so there's probably lots of things, right? But the guy is hilarious, but because of his dry sense of humour, not everyone gets it. I know that there's a lot of people. It's definitely very British humour as well. So I'm not sure if people from some of the other countries understand it.
Right.
But I find it very funny, and I know a lot of other people do. But I'm just hoping that in the future his personality will start coming out even more, because he's a really funny guy. He does have a big personality, but he's very humble with it. So you kind of have to be on the same wavelength sometimes to understand what he's saying. But I think because people haven't seen some of his early fights, they don't understand what a savage he really is.
Yeah.
He is, because he's so measured in his approach and all the work he's done with Faraz. He hasn't yet had to show it as much in the UFC, and I just think these things are coming. You know, the tougher fight Arnold has, the more you're going to see this stuff.
Right.
You know, the higher level guys he fights, I think you're going to see even more of a savage, I think, in there.
How happy are you about this association with Leon and the guys up at Renegade in Birmingham?
Yeah, so this is it's another thing, right? So there is a bit of a link from the guys at Renegade with TriStar. So Ada Lee, Tom Breeze, Ash Begg, all these guys were out training at TriStar when Arnold was there. So Arnold has a relationship with them anyway. I've also been a huge fan of Renegade, like since they started. You got obviously you got guys like the guys I just mentioned. You got Jai Herbert and Leon and all these guys, and I felt like, for me, watching those guys striking it's like poetry in motion. Like the way that they land their strikes, don't get hit, and it's perfect to watch. I always thought they were probably the best gym in the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he's not going back to Canada at the moment. I think he's working on the visa now to go back. So I think after this fight, he's probably going to head back there. But he was based in the UK for the last few years. So at our gym, BKK Fighters, we don't have the level of sparring partners that can sort of push Arnold. And Renegade do. So it's worth, he drives a 2.5 hours drive to get there on sparring days, Wednesdays and Saturdays, to make sure he does. And I really like their style, and they've got some real talent on the mat, and they're able to push him and help him develop to be an even better fighter. Yeah.
Culturally, I've enjoyed seeing the way that they do things in Birmingham. Yeah. They let their very open door to people coming onto their mat.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure if people take the piss, then it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't realise, and maybe you can talk about this, just to celebrate Leon a little bit. I think people see Leon a certain way because the figure that he is in the public eye, and he, like Arnold, he's quite reserved in many respects, but he does like a laugh.
Yeah.
But you put him on the mat in Birmingham, and how do you see the way that people treat Leon when he's in coaching mode?
I mean, he's hugely respected. Like, Arnold said to me that Leon's a phenomenal coach, and I just think the way he's a very humble guy, and the way he from what I've seen, the way he coaches is the way he explains the intricate details of the technique, and the way he understands it. You're obviously, that's why he is such a high level, but he understands the things that he's coaching to the minute detail, and I just think he's exceptionally technical. He's obviously a brilliant fighter, a brilliant strategist as well, and I just think he is where he is because he is that guy.
And how special is it for someone to have been able to do that without really, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to the guys around him, but he doesn't really have a head coach. So he essentially puts all of that together himself, and that is no easy thing to do.
Absolutely not. I think for me, like, maybe one of the reasons why I wasn't as successful as maybe I could have been is I felt like I didn't really have a sort of a head coach.
Right.
And for Leon to be able to do that without, to get to the level is where he's got to, without. So I know obviously he has coaches and stuff, but for him to be his own head coach and to get to the level where he is, it just shows you how sort of dedicated he is to the sport, and just it is very it's very incredible, and it's inspirational to see someone do that. I think he's a very special talent. Yeah.
Max Holloway.
Yeah.
If there's to get to the title, probably I would have pedalled this heavily last 18 months. If you want that belt, you've got to go through Max Holloway.
Yeah.
So now you're in a position where you have Max Holloway. You beat Max Holloway, you've got to be looking at the title.
Yeah.
So, first of all, when you get the news that that's the name coming across the desk, I mean, is that red panty night? I mean, is that what you class it?
I mean, I have been pushing Sean Shelby to give us Max Holloway for like a couple of years now.
Really?
Yeah, because
Jack, he's the highest of the high, and after we saw a little wobble, and then the Calvin Kattar fight was a masterclass.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, by the way, I'm not saying that Arnold can't do it, but I'm just trying to build this up to he's really that good. So to go after him is careful what you're choosing?
I don't think so.
Right.
I think the way Arnold, like, I think that Arnold's performance against Calvin Kattar was better. I think Arnold get hit once. Kattar was still landing on Holloway, and I think Arnold's performance against Kattar was better. I think Kattar was going to be done. He was done, but I think he was going to finish very quickly, regardless of the knee injury. I believe Arnold's better everywhere against Max. I know Max is the former champ. I think he's exceptional. He keeps a very high pace. He's got great gamesmanship as well, and sort of I think gets in people's heads. But I think Arnold's better. Yeah.
You mentioned the gamesmanship, and I remember when I used to do like the Inside the Octagon show with Dan, we'd talk about the mystique of certain fights, like John Jones, for example. He beat you before you got in there sometimes. Conor was a master at it. I'm not sure I'd necessarily say Max has it to that level, probably doesn't try to, but he's going to have a mystique, given his status. Is Arnold the kind of guy that pays attention to any of that stuff?
He doesn't give a fuck. Honestly, he is... Ever since he was a young kid, is all he's wanted to do. He feels at home in there, and he is super confident in his abilities. Yeah, I think, obviously, clearly, Max Holloway is very dangerous. No one's discounting how good he is. And anyone can be beaten on any given day, right? But I just genuinely believe Arnold's much better everywhere. And I think Arnold thinks the same thing, and that's probably one of the biggest things. Like, if Arnold wasn't so confident, he's very humble and he's quietly confident. But if he wasn't so confident, we wouldn't be asking for the fight, and we wouldn't have been campaigning for this fight. So I think it's going to be a really good fight for Arnold. He'll be able to showcase what he's about, I believe. And showcase the sort of that next level of skill that maybe people. I just don't think people realise how good he is yet, and hopefully they will. But maybe they'll say, "Well, Max Holloway's done now," so Arnold's just taking advantage of that, which is I'm sure what some haters will say. But I think he's going to make it look very easy.
Does he need to make it look easy and get like a real big statement performance given that landscape at the top of the division?
No. Well, I don't know. I think Arnold needs to win, which I think he will do. Max Holloway is very tough to stop. I don't, I'm sure Arnold's is capable of it, but Max Holloway is probably one of the toughest guys out there. So I think Arnold will make it look easy in terms of the way he's going to execute his strategy. But in terms of a finish, I don't know. I'm hoping he gets the finish. If he doesn't, he's going to make it look easy in terms of a decision win, I believe. But I think once you beat Max Holloway, I think he's a clear contender for the title.
Right.
I think in Arnold's words, he said you might as well put the interim title in the bin. Once you beat Max Holloway, surely he's the number one contender.
Do you think that Volk fights Yair next, or do you think they make that rematch?
I feel like they're going to make the rematch.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? I personally, I don't know. I think the purist in me would like let's realign the divisions and let's see what goes on there. Because on the same night, Volk was saying, I'll fight. I'll fight Yair next. But then I saw a clip from an Australian Aussie Fox interview where he said Islam said he'd do it again. So Volk was like, let's do it. Let's go. Let's do the rematch. That's the next fight. And of course, he's going to. This is no bearing on him, but I just think, it'd be nice to then get a straight path in both divisions, and they're so young.
Absolutely,
They can make that fight in the future, maybe, but I guess if he runs into the wrong opponent, either of them.
That's it. But Volk can do what he wants. I think the way that he handled himself in that last fight, I believe he won.
Does that make him more intimidating for you as a coach of a contender after his performance against Islam?
No.
Okay.
He's very good. I've actually had the chance to spar Volkanovski.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. So when I was preparing for the Tory fight, that was at welterweight, and I think I was walking around at 82 kilos, and I think Volk was about the same. I was working out for my day job. I was working out in Melbourne, and they had I think my apartment was just opposite the Etihad Stadium at the time, and that's where they had the Holly Holm Ronda Rousey fight.
The big pay-per-view one,
and Volk was in town for that. He wasn't in the UFC at the time, and he was training at Absolute MMA, where there's loads of big good Aussies out there. But I was sparring with Volk at the time, so he's very good. He is the only guy that has made me puke up after a round in sparring.
Holy shit!
He was.
What did he do?
It's just his pace. He's just relentless. I was very shocked at how high paced he is. But very, very, very good.
Right.
And I said to Arnold, as soon as he got signed to UFC, you need to watch out for this guy. And this was a long time ago when I said that. But we've had our eye on him for a long time. It's a very tough fight. A very tough fight. I don't think we were expecting it to go the way it did. I'm not sure whether we thought Volk would win or wouldn't, but we knew it was going to be competitive. And he's pound for pound number one for a reason, So clearly Arnold has his eyes on beating him, but it's a extremely difficult fight. He's probably one of the most well-rounded fighters out there. Yeah.
Can Arnold become the featherweight champion?
He will become the champion. Yeah.
Have you guys got a timeline?
I think it will happen next year. Just given the way things pan out, the lightweight and featherweight title picture needs to be sorted out. If they do an interim versus champ unification fight, then we'll have to wait that one out. So. We'll see where that lands. So
does that mean you'll probably have to fight one more after Holloway?
Possibly. we'll see how things go because we don't know what Volk's going to do.
No, of course.
Yeah. So this year or next,
right?
But I think by next year he'll be the champ.
Very exciting. Couple of other things I know you've got to get out of here, Jack, but I've got to ask you about Cory, of course. You know, how old was you? Said that Arnold was 14 when he came to the gym. Like, how old was Cory when?
13.
So she was 13.
13, and those two have been competitors since day one. You know, like they always had this this little rivalry with, and Cory was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to get to UFC before you get to, before the same age you got to UFC. Yeah. I'm going to, and they still argue about whether that happened or not, because it's actually we're talking about a matter of weeks.
Really?
Yeah, and they're still debating whether the cut-off is who signed the contract first, who actually had the
fight.
Yeah, who had their fight. Yeah.
Brilliant. How nice is it though for you, and valuable, that you've got that healthy rivalry between two of your students at that level? Because that's actually really positive, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There aren't, as a coach, it's a blessing because, there are, I'm sure many coaches will say this, but I think I said it earlier, but there, you can have super talented guys that don't work very hard, or you have super talented guys that work very hard but just aren't that tough, or you can have not very talented guys that work very hard and are super tough. There's lots of combinations of that, but it's very rare that you get a super talented guy that works very hard and he's super tough. And I've had two of them walk through the door at my gym, and those guys have been, from day one, they've been absolutely, their minds have been set that they're going to be in the UFC and they're going to be world champions one day. And it's to experience that with two fighters in a short space of time is crazy, and it's like I guess like hitting the jackpot as a coach.
Yeah.
But, it's very, both of those two inspire me, because just they take their preparation so seriously, and just do everything they possibly can to achieve their goals. And in today's society and the young generation, it's very refreshing to see that. So pretty cool.
Wind back the clock 10 years plus then, when you've got both of these, or however it looks. But honestly, could you see this path for them? They might come through the door and say they want it, but we already spoke about how lean the opportunities are in the state of UK MMA.
I'll be completely honest. Yeah, I think you could just tell the way they were so dedicated and they were so sincere in, this is what I'm going to do when I'm older.
Right.
Crazy. Well, I think with Cory, obviously at the time, there wasn't that pathway for
women,
females or women to take that.
Say women. She was she was a teenager, wasn't she? Yeah, literally.
But again, she was 15, and obviously I'm a fight promoter as well. And on my event, Cory wanted to fight, and she was like, I want this girl. I was like, she's the IMF world champion, got gold medalist, just won the world championship. So I want that girl next. I was like, that's a very tough fight.
At what point in her career?
Cory was 15.
Right.
This girl was 28. And I was like, all right. So I got in touch with the gold medalist, and she couldn't do that date, but I got in touch with the silver medalist, because it was the next best girl in the world, and we put the fight on. Cory won, and but that's how she is so confident in her ability.
Yeah,
she was always looking for the hard. You have these fighters that look for the easiest fight, or because they want to build out their record. But she didn't care. She just wanted the hardest fight possible to prove how good she was, and she's always had that chip on her shoulder.
Yeah, there's something about her character. For people, she's obviously becoming more well known now, and the microphones are going in front of her, but. She intimidates me. Yeah. Sometimes sitting down to talk to her, she's like, right, what do you want? You're like, okay, right, yeah.
She knows exactly what she wants, and and in most cases she gets it, you know,
Right.
because she's so determined. She'll order me about, she'll order Uriah Faber about, and she'll just get what she wants. Yeah.
Actually, we're here with my friend James, who's helping out with the filming, and we did a little film on Jack Shaw,
Yeah.
and Cory was supposed to be fighting, so I can't remember the opponent, but it was down in Wales, and the opponent missed weight significantly. And it's just a little funny story where I just went up to her, it was on camera, and just sort of said to her, like, oh, so what's the deal?
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, my opponent's missed weight. And she was obviously pissed.
Yeah.
And then she looks me up and down and goes, you look similar to my weight. Fancy it? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, she just, no holds barred. And but I love that about her. I kind of want the UFC audience and the MMA fans to see more of that. It will come in time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because she's got a very unique character, hasn't she?
She does. She obviously, she looks very sweet and innocent, but she's
This artist as well, beautiful artwork.
She's just got like a sadistic, evil side to her as well. But it's in a nice way, you know, because she's obviously a fighter, and that's what. Yeah, she genuinely wants to do damage to her opponents. And
is it harder, again, being like when you with the sport the way that it was, and then you get a girl come into the gym, a young female with her life ahead of you in this sport. Like, does it take a different style of management and coaching?
A little bit. Like in her GCSE, she got 9 A stars. Like,
did she really?
Perfect across the board. Like, you could go to Cambridge, Oxford, whatever, Harvard, whatever you want.
That is unbelievable to get that score.
Right. She was like, no, I'm quitting school. I'm not going to college. I'm not going to university. It's like, right. Well, you could do that. You could go to college and university and still train.
Yeah.
She was like, no.
Because you did that.
Yeah. She was like, no, this is all I want to do. And that was it. She dropped out of school after she got that.
That's even more pressure on those around her that are supporting, sort of.
Yeah. And her parents helped her out. She's had some really good sponsors from day one, because they saw how talented she was and how dedicated, and they've helped her out. But she's just super driven, and that's all she wants to do. She, obviously, it's difficult to find training partners for girls of her size. So she moved out to the States to make that happen. Alpha Male was obviously one of the small people's gyms for a long time, and so that was where she found her home really out there. So she's now applying for citizenship, but she's got a visa, US visa out anyway. So I think she could be moving there, or she's going to be there permanently, at least for the time being. Right.
So it's early in Cory's career, and I think that in women's MMA they accelerate very quickly, right? So she's super young, like breaking through to the upper echelons. So, like, how far can she go?
So I think the strawweight division in the UFC is probably the toughest division out there, and I think with Cory, I was looking at the Fight Matrix rankings the other day actually, and literally, I think she's something like number 18 at the moment. But everyone up from there is just incredibly difficult, difficult opponents.
It's a lot of experience in that.
A lot of experience, and the skill set in women's MMA now is going through the roof. So Cory is in the right place. She looks phenomenal in her last 2 fights. She just beat a very tough opponent, which I know she was the underdog for, like a big knockout artist, which you don't really get in women's strawweight. But Cory handled her really well. So she has got she's got some tough work to do, and she's got she knows it as well, but she's got some improvements to make. But I think she can go all the way. She's still super young. She's in the right place, and she's got to keep taking her time. Keep improving in terms of the opponents she's beating. But I definitely think she can be the champ as well.
No, it is. I've always been a massive fan of women's MMA. One of my first commentary gigs is that we had females headlining.
Yeah.
And like that was a really bloody fight with elbows and stuff, big cuts and things like that. And Rosie Sexton has always been someone that I've really looked up to in this sport.
They just don't have any fear, and they're just so vicious as well.
And technically proficient.
Yeah.
I think as a student.
So when Cory first started, was coming up there and talking about becoming, getting to the UFC and stuff. We used to joke in the gym that technically they weren't as good.
Right.
A lot of it was like you just grab around the head and get him in a headlock. Okay. You still see some of that, but there's the level of women's MMA now has just the girls we're talking about. I still think Valentina Shevchenko is one of the best fighters in the world. Regardless
pound for pound, regardless of gender. Oh my!
She's unbelievable. And as I say, we're looking up. I've watched so many fights now from the strawweight girls. You've got some really tough girls from Brazil, from Mexico. That aren't, they're outside the top 10, but they are scary. The striking is scary, the jiu-jitsu is scary. It's a very tough division, and as you say, technically they're as proficient as the guys now.
Yeah,
it wasn't the case a few years ago, but now it is, and it's very it's very scary to see how far they've come.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the top how many job titles you've got.
Yeah.
What's your most difficult job out of all of them?
I would say fight promotion.
Thought you might say that, which leads me on. So what's the name of the promotion?
So I run the Cage Warriors Academy Southeast. So it's the So we are essentially a feeder promotion to Cage Warriors. We develop the grassroots talent. So from their first amateur fight through the entire, we've got some. I'll give you some examples. We've got some big names like Chanel Dyer, John Vettel, Furheim, Cecily Bolander, like some really, Jack Eglin. They've done all of their fights, all of their amateur fights on my event.
Right.
Bar a couple, maybe at IMF or whatever. But these kids are just unbelievable, phenomenal athletes, and they're going to be the next superstars.
All of those that you just mentioned. Yeah. I saw Chanel this week actually, and I know she's been working with Veronica Macedo down at Brad's gym, and Vettel. Yeah. I know that is he Norwegian?
He's Norwegian.
Yeah. I think he's he looks the part, doesn't he? Yeah. So I don't think it's be too long before we see him right at the very top as well.
So all of these. So the way we develop the talent from the show is we give them the right matchups at the right time, and build up the level of competition through their amateur career. Then we essentially, our business model will provide them with, for the guys that have been with us during their amateur career, we'll give them their first 2 or 3, 1 to 3 pro fights,
right,
and then they move on to the bigger promotions.
Yeah, but that must be quite challenging in a lot of respects as well, because I imagine, like, in terms of the business of running things, like for me, the pro shows where you can get big sponsors involved, and I mean, I know there's cost associated with both, but on the amateur level, with the production value that I know that you guys look to achieve, it doesn't look like there's a lot of room to try. No, they're unknown. There's a lot of these athletes coming up.
I think that the way the business model works in fight promotions are that you have to build fighters' personalities so that they sell tickets, basically, to put bums on seats.
Right.
And that's that's how you pay for the promotion. You have to sell tickets to put bums on seats, so you can put on a good show, and you can give the audience a good product. But my main goal, why I started the promotion, was that I had, obviously running BKK fighters, and we had a big team of amateurs and pros that were fighting up and down the country or around Europe, and the shows were hit and miss. So I'd probably say 90% of the shows, would just were really poor in terms of the way that they that they looked after the fighters. The matchmaking was poor. Like really small things like on our promotion, we have medical, we have a medical team there. We have ambulances on standby in case someone gets injured.
Like ridiculous, but people have got to understand that this doesn't exist everywhere.
No, so we put basically a minimum criteria for what we would be happy to put on a show. So that basically means that we've got 2 to 4 medics on hand, 2 doctors on hand, 2 ambulances. We have, we've got, in terms of the officials, we've got cut men, referees, judges, all who also work at the UFC or Bellator or whatever, all shows all over the world. They also are the same officials that we use for our event. We make sure that we, the matches are, 50-50 matchups.
Yeah.
So wherever possible. We also provide hand wrapping for all the fighters, provide gloves for the fighters, all these types of things which we feel like is a bare minimum. Obviously that comes at a cost, but there are lots of other promotions that don't do that, and definitely don't meet some of the bare minimum criteria that, even just having sort of the right medical staff there to look after the people that are competing.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because it obviously comes at a cost, and the margins are so tight on these events. It's just very difficult. I think there is a perception maybe that if you're a fight promoter, you're having it off in terms of the money, but you're really not. Like I've done 31 shows. I
Jesus.
think we've broken even on 8 of them, and probably made some sort of profit on about 5 of them. So the rest of it, my missus ain't gonna watch this, but I probably spent close to 6 figures on putting of my personal money.
Jesus
the show
Christ.
on. Yeah.
Really?
Hopefully we'll pay it back in future. But
is that so? What is the goal then for the show?
It was always to, my only goal was to provide a quality platform for originally my fighters to fight on, so that I could be absolutely sure they'd be well matched and be competing in a safe environment, and then just kind of extending that to the region, and the scene really, and that's basic. I feel like we've got probably the best product in Europe at the moment, the best platform, and a lot of given that we have people coming over from Belgium, France, Norway, Sweden, you name it, Italy.
Wonderful for amateurs and pros to have that opportunity
to fight on our events, and they come over at their own cost.
Right.
They pay for their own flights, hotels, the lot.
Okay.
So we're obviously doing something right.
Yeah.
We're trying to put on the best product we can possible, the best platform for these guys to showcase their skills, but also develop their skills. And that's really our goal. We're getting there. There's obviously always things to improve and stuff, but just going to keep doing it. The goals have never been financial, but as long as it's paying for itself and not costing me any money, then
sounds like it's taken away your holiday home in Spain, Jack. Am I going on a back burner for a little while?
Yeah. Well, I've got an extension to build at home, so I can't be spending any more money on it.
Where can people watch the show? So
you can watch. So all of our previous fights are on our YouTube channel.
Right.
Cage Warriors Academy Southeast. Obviously our live events, it's always better to come down and watch it live, but they're held at Charter Hall in Colchester, and we always stream the events now on our website, cagewarriorsacademy.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I always, wish you all the luck with that, because I know that it's a massive stress.
Yeah, it's very difficult finding the right matches for people and dealing with different fighter personalities and things like that. So,
but also your attention to the amateur MMA scene. I know that this probably comes, and it will lead me into your coaching, but you're really operating like from the full life cycle of the sport, and I'm not sure that's very common, because I think people will have a focus. Trevor Whitman, for example, probably an extreme version, but he's only got a very small collection of fighters at the very top. I don't think that he's working with the amateur scene so much.
Yeah,
it's a lot to take on.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think if I'm honest, I don't think, apart from the money, I don't think much changes. You know, like these guys that fight in, you know, we talked about earlier, these guys fighting amateur, some are giving up their jobs. They're training like a full-time pro.
Scary, isn't it?
By, you know, when they've only had one amateur fight. And this is why the sport is just going to just get bigger and bigger. You know, and the skill set of the fighters, you know, 5-10 years is just going to be, you're going to make these guys that are fighting now just look like amateurs. They're just, there's a lot of people dedicating, you know, their entire lives to this now, and they've you know, whereas, you know, when I was competing and then sort of the next generation after that, the coaching level has improved dramatically over a period of time, but the coaches now are, you know, you've got guys that were fighting when I was fighting that are now some of the, you know, top coaches in the UK, and developing these like really talented fighters. You know, Brad Pickett's an example. He was fighting, but now he's got like a team of killers coming through his gym. Pete Irving, he's got the Hardwick brothers. You know, there's just lots of this new generation of coaches. They've been there, they've had their fight careers, they've learned all the mistakes like I have, and they're just able to pass that knowledge on to the next group of fighters, and you're just going to keep evolving. These guys are going to just get better and better. Yeah.
How nice is it then as a coach to see the sport grow so very quickly?
It's just like, I'll give you just one example in my gym. So we've got a young kid that was training since he was sort of 14, 15, and he was begging me to fight. We've actually, I've talked about some of our young fighters fighting at the age of 15 and stuff like that. We've actually knocked that on the head now. So he's just 18, you know, no one below sort of 18 is going to fight in an amateur fight, because just because the level's so good, it is very dangerous. So we've got a young boy, Kevin Wang, who came through our gym, and he was training with, you know, all of our top fighters. While, you know, he was just in the gym day in, day out, and he was begging me to fight when he was 16, 17. And I said no. And on his 18th birthday, I actually had an event. So he fought, but just looking at the level, you know, he could do everything. You know, like, he's got the jiu-jitsu, he's got the wrestling, got the striking, and he's doing everything at a high level. And it's beautiful to watch it. You know, just seeing that. Just that, you know, how far the sport's come, you know, like, and how good these new guys are going to be.
Yeah.
It's just, it's beautiful to watch it, honestly.
Does it push you as a coach?
Yeah, because, I mean, firstly, I always try and still stay active in the gym. I'm still sparring twice a week.
Every time I've come to see Arnold, you've been down there, and I can see I can see your eyes change when the bell rings.
I have to, like, before, when I used to coach classes, I used to get involved a lot more, you know, like do some of the live drills and stuff like that. I found now that if I'm going to give the coaching the full, you know, effort it deserves, that I kind of have to focus on the coaching and not get involved as much in the class. But I still get, you know, we still have different levels of fighters in the gym. I'm still training myself a little bit, but I do always like to get involved in the actual sparring days. Yeah. Just because it makes you feel alive still, but also, but I'm just realising, you know, the more I do it with these guys that are developing so much, that they really are getting much better. Yeah. And I really have to stay on top of my game to be able to compete with them it's it's really interesting to see how good they can become. But it does push me as a coach, because firstly I have to be able to keep improving and as a coach and giving them new things to work on and new skill sets and stuff like that. But also I want to be learning myself as well, so I can try and keep up with them as well.
I asked this to a lot of the coaches, or all of the coaches really, because I love the psychology of fighting, and I'm also aware as like an aging bloke, the strain of life in general, like when you have a family and work and everything else, and I see how much, as someone who's kind of part of a team still too, the highs and lows. And then my coach is same age. I'll probably pick the phone up if I've got a problem. There's wisdom there. Do you know? And so I know that you're going to be that guy for other people. And you wear all of these hats. And of all the people that I've spoken to, I don't think there's people wear as many hats as you do. In fact, how do you manage yourself with the weight? You might not see it this way, but there's a pressure and sometimes a burden of keeping everyone happy.
It is difficult, especially. It's a tough one because, for instance, on like a sparring day, right? So we'll have guys from my gym, and then a lot of the time we'll have guys from other gyms that will come down to join in with the sparring, which is great for everyone involved. But I find, I've got to be home. My wife is gets to like 9 o'clock. My wife, when are you gonna be home? Should I put the dinner on? Like that type of thing. But I've got these guys that I maybe only see once a week or whatever it is, and they want to chat and they ask about, when should I take this fight, or just lots of things like that. Or I'm supposed to be doing our next event in sort of 6 weeks. Who have I been matched with? All that type of thing. So it is very difficult to keep on top of it all. But for me, I do enjoy that. I would go crazy if I wasn't busy. And it's everything's to do with MMA is my passion. I love it. So it's never really a chore. It can get stressful at times, especially with the promoting. But I just really enjoy it. It's my hobby. I don't do anything else. I don't go and watch the football on a Saturday or anything like that. I just do MMA.
Couple before I let you go, you got to let us know a couple of these amateurs or maybe even young pros that we should be looking out for.
So I think in terms of Cage Warriors Academy stars, we've got a guy called Jimmy Quinn. So he's had some phenomenal. He's the Cage Warriors Academy Featherweight amateur champ. He's had some phenomenal performances. Have a look on YouTube. His spinning heel kick knockout like last year was our sort of most viral knockout, and that young man is. I mean, he's basically signed up to the Cage Warriors MMA Academy, he's just flown out, I think, yesterday to San Diego.
Oh, to do this reality show thing they've got, right? And
that he's going to be phenomenal. He's got all the heart in the world, phenomenal skill set, and I think he's going to be a big name in the future.
Right.
I would say, it was spoken about her earlier, but Chanel Dyer, I think she's an absolute killer. She's making a pro debut in a few weeks, I think.
Right.
Hexagon in France.
Right.
But as an amateur, she was a legitimate killer. As an amateur, she fought everyone, and she's just getting better and better. I think training at GB Top Team, her wrestling's going to get much better. So we can see her going all the way.
Yeah. Nice.
There's many.
I know. I kind of put you guys on the spot when I say that, but I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and also thank you for your service to the sport, Jack, because you've been around so long and we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And I've seen from my work with Safe MMA, you've always been such a big supporter of getting it right.
Yeah.
Not cutting corners. We see it with the promotion. And obviously your wisdom that has guided the careers of the people that we're enjoying today as well. So, you know, I know it doesn't come without a lot of sacrifice and cost. So thank you. And I look forward to the future.
Thanks, mate.